Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Virtual AP Art History. So far, we've been looking at artwork created in Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries, but we need to stop, rewind, and take a look at what's been happening in Mexico. We only have two artworks to look at, one from the mid-18th century and the other from the mid-19th century. These works are roughly 100 years apart from each other, and although they provide a glimpse into the art making happening in Mexico, they by no means show a comprehensive picture. We're going to start in 1750 with a portrait by Miguel Cabrera called Portrait of Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz. Let's take a look at who Sor Juana was before discussing Cabrera's depiction. Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz lived in the mid-17th century during Mexico's colonial period. Sor Juana was the illegitimate daughter of a Spanish captain and a Creole woman. Due to her Spanish ancestry but Mexican birth, Sor Juana was considered to be Creole as well. We've seen this breakdown in the Costa paintings that were created before this time. Her father was absent most of her life, but her mother's father owned a hacienda, so she lived rather comfortably. Her grandfather had a huge library, and Sor Juana would read in secret, as reading was not allowed for young girls. She became a child prodigy, learning how to read and write at age 3, composing poetry by 8, teaching Latin at 13, and even learning and composing poetry in the Aztec language of Nahuatl. At 16, she was sent to Mexico City, but not before asking her mother if she could disguise herself as a man to enter university. Without the ability to gain a formal education, she taught herself privately, eventually becoming a lady-in-waiting for the wife of the viceroy. Sor Juana's reputation increased greatly as she impressed the people of the Spanish court. What are you doing? You want to be a part of this video? Talking about Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz. This is Tails. Back to Sor Juana. So she impressed people of the Spanish court, and she received a lot of offers for marriage, but she declined them all because she was only really interested in learning and studying. Thus, she entered a monastic lifestyle, trying out the Carmelite nuns before settling into the monastery of the Hieronymite nuns. She stayed there until her death, studying, writing, both letters and plays, and amassing a really large library. She was often criticized for her writing because it was super radical, especially for the time. A letter of hers was published that called for religious restructuring, drawing critics to tell her to stop pursuing her secular studies and begin writing and to focus that on devotion and prayer. She also wrote many letters advocating for women to be put in positions of authority. She argued that only then could women learn from other women. She became embroiled in an ecclesiastical debate between the bishops of Mexico City and Puebla. The church forced her to give up her literary pursuits, and they forced her to give up her library and her musical instruments. She renounced her learning in one final published letter, and she signed that letter, I, Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz, the worst in the world, in her own blood. After this, she tended to elderly and the sick, but became ill herself and passed away during an epidemic in 1655. Fast forward to 1750, and here we have a painting of this scholar by Miguel Cabrera, who was recognized as the greatest painter in all of New Spain. Cabrera is most known for his Costa paintings and his depictions of the Virgin of Guadalupe. He created this posthumous portrait in honor of Sor Juana's life. He likely modeled this depiction of her after depictions of Saint Jerome, who was the patron saint of Sor Juana's religious order, the Hieronymite order. She's portrayed as an intellectual surrounded by her books and writing at her desk. She is also portrayed as a religious figure. She's wearing the Hieronymite habit and the nun's badge around her neck, which is called an escudo. It's beneath her chin. She holds on to a rosary in her left hand while her right hand rests upon an open book. And although in many ways this is a typical portrait of a nun, there are some key differences. She's facing the viewer and gazing out with direct eye contact. She's also surrounded by instruments of learning and items like a red curtain, which demonstrate her high status. Sor Juana's impact is evident. The topics she advocated for became full-on feminist movements in the 18th and 19th century, and she's still an important historical figure in Mexico today. You do have one other artwork from Mexico to cover in readings and a video that's posted on Google Classroom. It's about 100 years after Miguel Cabrera's portrait of Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz. So you'll cover it in the readings, and if you have any questions about either of these two works, don't hesitate to reach out either through Google Classroom or email. I am here to help.